I was born in Macedonia to Albanian parents with Muslim background. But like most of their generation, they were not religious at all. They considered it old-fashioned to be religious, and they raised us as non-religious. We moved to Kosovo and I went to primary school there. One day, around the 5th or 6th grade, my math teacher laughed at one of the students who did not know how to construct the 30-degree angle. I considered it rude that she laughed at him, and I thought to myself, what if I asked her to construct the 35-degree angle? She would not know how to do it either. I had noticed that she would only teach us the main angles, like the 60-degree, 30-degree, 45-degree, 90-degree angles, and she was ignoring the other angles. But then I thought, wait a minute, why should I judge her when I myself don't know how to do it either? I spent several nights just thinking about how to find a method which works for all angles. There was no internet then to find the answer. About 2 weeks later, I found the answer just by thinking about it. I was so happy I had discovered something new in mathematics. The next day, I said to my older sister, "You can ask me how to construct any angle and I can construct it without using a protractor." She said, "Yes, it is called sinus and cosinus. It is already discovered." I had rediscovered trigonometry just by thinking, and I realized that it is possible to discover the truth about reality and existence without learning it somewhere else. So this passion about discovering the truth emerged in me. I knew I had the determination, but I had doubts whether I was smart enough to at least have chances to discover it. These doubts mostly went away once I participated in math competitions at the municipal and national level and won. So I knew that at least I had very small chances to discover the ultimate truth. That became my main goal in life. I wanted to find the ultimate truth. I was hoping that mathematics, astronomy, and physics would be a good tool to understand the ultimate truth. To me, they looked like the best contenders which could help me find the ultimate truth. And I spent most of my youth thinking about these three subjects. My parents had a relatively large library of books, but we did not have a Quran or Bible in our house. When I was about 16, a relative had brought a Quran to our house. It was a poor translation, but I read it. From the first quick read, I did not know for sure if it was the truth, but it surely was an important book speaking about fundamental things, which I liked because the truth is found easier in fundamental things. I kept it at the back of my mind as a potential place where I could find the truth. Then my father decided to send me as an exchange high school student to the United States. The program required that I live with an American family for a year. They happened to be a Christian family in Iowa, and they gave me a Bible, which I read. I could see that both the Quran and the Bible were books with many good moral stories, but I wanted to know whether they are true, whether they are factually true. I was not interested in myths and legends, so I was determined to find out whether they are true. Most of the stories in the Bible and the Quran seemed like impossible to prove or disprove because they were ancient history about local events of people who did not necessarily leave archaeological evidence. But there was one story which I thought could be proven or disproven scientifically: the story of Noah. The English translation of the Bible implied that all the land animals on earth today descended from a small group of animals which were saved in a ship by our ancestor Noah when a flood covered the whole earth. Since this was the only story which claimed a global event, I realized that it was a provable or disprovable event because you cannot have a flood covering the whole earth without a major astronomical or geological event. It just does not happen. All that additional water at once has to come from somewhere, either from above or from below. So the claim which the English Bible was making was not just a historical claim, like in the other stories. It was also an astronomical and geological claim. And astronomy and geology can be proven or disproven, even without written documents, unlike history. So I could use my knowledge in astronomy to prove or disprove this story. I spent my last year in high school thinking about this problem and how to solve it. I explored many ideas, and I especially focused on the Milankovitch cycles, meltwater pulses, magnetic polarity reversals, and comet tails as potential explanations for a global flood. However, there was a problem to the story. The Bible also gives the dimensions of the ship with which Noah survived, so it was easy to calculate whether 6 million species of land animals could fit within one ship to survive. Obviously, they did not fit. So I thought maybe this part of the Bible has been changed or mistranslated. When I moved to New Jersey in the first year of college, I decided to see what the Quran has to say about this. So I found 6 English translations of the Quran on the internet. 5 of them implied that Noah had taken all the animals in the ship with him, or at least left that option open, while one of them claimed that only Noah's livestock were included, only the domesticated animals, and the flood was a local flood, not the whole world. This would explain why I did not find any scientific evidence for a global flood. And from the Quran we can see this from verse 1140, that it is talking only about animals which lived together with Noah's family, which means domesticated animals. It can be seen from the context of the verse, which tells us how Noah was ordered not to include the people and the animals which go against Noah's voice. So wild animals would run away from Noah's voice, but domesticated animals would listen to Noah's voice when he called them. So only the people and animals which responded to Noah's voice when he called them were included in the ship, which was only his family and his domesticated animals. But at that time I did not know this, and 5 of the 6 Quran translations which I was reading actually endorsed the wrong idea that all the animal species of the world went with Noah, seemingly taking the idea from the Bible. And it seemed quite unlikely to me that 5 Quran translations would be translated wrong, while one of them would be right, so I decided to exclude this translation from my research anyway. But just to be on the safe side, I decided to read it one more time before I exclude it. The translation seemed to make a big claim. It claimed that it provided mathematical proof from God that the Quran is a revelation from God and not a human-made book. So I thought, aha, this is my field of expertise. I can disqualify this translation simply by finding the methodological flaws of this mathematical claim. So I analyzed it for several days, and I could not find any flaw in the methodology, and I surrendered. There clearly seemed to be a mathematical miracle in the Quran. And then I opened the Quran and started reading it and reached chapter 7, where it tells the story of how the expert magicians tried to defeat Moses with their magic, and they themselves got defeated. And then they fell prostrate. The subtitle in this section of the translation reads, "The truth recognized by the experts." Then it hit me. I am the expert in mathematics, and I just got defeated in my own field, just like the expert magicians were defeated in their own field. I realized the truth. I accepted that the Quran was indeed a book from God. I felt prostrate, I cried, I repented, I learned how to do the contact prayers, I submitted to God. I became a submitter and decided to live my life according to the Quran. I was 19 years old then in 2004. I had no contact with any submitters or any other religious groups. I wished to meet them, but I did not know who they are and where they live, and I did not believe in organized religion then anyway. To me, this was a personal journey then. A few weeks after that, I came across verse 26:214, which says that you should preach to the people who are closest to you. So I decided to tell my closest people, my family and people in my country, the good news that the Quran is really from God. But it would be hard for me to share the truth with them unless I had the information in Albanian, especially since they were not interested in religious topics, and the older generations do not understand English. So I decided to translate the authorized English translation of the Quran in Albanian. As soon as I started, I got stuck in the second word of the Quran. I could not decide how to translate the word God in Albanian, because in Albanian it has been completely replaced by the word Lord, and the original Albanian word for God has almost completely vanished from everyday use. And there is a difference between the word God and the word Lord. There can be many lords, just like there are many kings. Anyone who legally owns slaves is a lord. However, there is only one God. There are no other gods except God. And of course, only God is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. And if I could not express this clearly in Albanian, I would risk delivering the message of monotheism incorrectly. I did not want to continue further unless I solved this issue. So I wanted to read the ancient Albanian religious books and see how these words evolved and in what context were they used. I could not find Albanian books online during the early days of internet in 2004. So I decided to travel travel back to Kosovo and read the books which I needed, which were in my parents' library. If I asked them to send them to me, they would ask me questions why I needed them instead of sending them, especially because they did not want me to become religious. So to my parents' surprise, I went back to Kosovo. My naive plan was to finish the translation in a few months and go back to USA. But God had other plans, and I ended up staying in Kosovo. I attended an American university there, a branch of Rochester Institute of Technology, but in fact, I spent most of my nights studying to improve my terminology to translate the Quran in Albanian. When the end of the academic year came, in the summer of 2005, I was ready to translate the Quran. As soon as summer vacation started, I started translating the Quran. My writing and literature teacher had taught me to write in several drafts, so I decided to translate it all as a first rough draft during the summer and then revise it in many other drafts during several years and then make it public. By the end of the summer in 2005, I finished the first draft, but I did not resolve one important issue yet. I still could not decide which name of God I should use in Albanian. I was still torn between the correct but almost unused option or the less correct but used option. I said to myself, maybe if I find people using the correct name of God in other regions where Albanians live, who speak slightly different dialects, that would justify my use of that name, even though it is not used daily in Kosovo. So I set out on a journey to find the correct name of God being used among the people in Albania. It was my first time there. I did not have much money as a student, so I decided to go to the cheapest touristic place in Durrës, Albania. When I went there, I found out that the beaches were overcrowded, full of young, immodest women in swimsuits. That environment was unacceptable for me, especially then. So I decided to travel further south, hopefully to find a more remote and less crowded beach. I reached the beach by a forest area. It was called Mali Iropit, the Mount of the Serpent. The hotel had the same name as well. Anyway, once there, I realized that my journey was quite unproductive, since I felt shy to start random conversations with people. And even when we had a conversation, they would almost never use the name of God, and I did not hear the correct version. I could not travel further south because I ran out of money, and I decided that I was going to use the correct ancient name of God in Albanian, even if I had no evidence that people still use it in their daily lives today, even if it makes the book sound weird. But I still had doubts whether I was making the correct choice. So before I went to sleep, I decided to pray to God. I said, please God, show me a sign if I'm doing the correct thing. If at any time I would expect you to talk to me, can you please talk to me now? But then I thought, this is an invalid prayer. The Quran is the final scripture revealed to Muhammad, and I should not expect God to talk to me directly. So I corrected my prayer and I said, okay God, you don't have to talk to me, but at least show me how it would feel if you talked to me. I went to sleep that night, and when dawn came, a voice woke me up calling me Alban Fejza. I heard it with my whole body, not just with my ears. The voice came from every direction, from outside of my body and from inside of my body. Time felt different, and I felt completely in peace and loved like never before. Even after I felt the words, I continued feeling them during the whole day, as if though they had been absorbed by my whole body. And I have never heard voices in my life, before that or after that. I knew that something very important had just happened, but I did not know what it meant. Anyway, now 16 years later, I finally understood what it means, and I tell you later in this video. But let me continue with my story first. Anyway, I finished college, started working, gave manuscripts of the Quran to my family and relatives, but I still did not publish it. I decided not to publish the Quran unless I'm willing to obey every order it gives me. There is a verse in the Quran which says, "Do you ask the people to be righteous while forgetting yourselves?" And by translating the Quran, I was by default asking the people to be righteous. And I did not feel qualified to do that unless I myself was ready to obey every order the Quran gives me. So I entered into a self-improvement exercise to see whether I have the courage to obey every order the Quran gives me. And a lot of the orders which the Quran gives start with the word say. It tells us what to say, and you need courage to say some of those things. I had decided to say those things no matter what people think of me, and only then can I consider myself worthy of publishing the translation. While I was doing this self-improvement exercise, one day in 2008, when I was reading the Quran, I came across verse 10 in chapter 44 of the Quran. It says, "Therefore, watch for the day when the sky brings a profound smoke." The word watch caught my attention. I thought the Quran not only tells me what to say, but also what to watch. So let me also obey this order. So I looked outside of the window and watched the sky, but I saw no smoke. I realized that God wants me to watch for it in the Quran, and within a few minutes I found it. God let me discover that the smoke will come in the year 2052. And this automatically came with a new awareness that I was God's messenger. And later I confirmed this based on verse 72:27, which says that only to a messenger that he chooses does he reveal from the past and the future specific news. And since God let me know a specific future event, it automatically meant that I was God's messenger. So I knew that I was God's messenger, but I did not know which messenger I was. I could not understand why would God send a messenger soon after another messenger. What is my role in all this? I understood my role a few months later when I was preparing to travel to UK, after I had won a scholarship to continue my master's studies there. I found out online that there are other submitters who live in UK, and I had never met other submitters before, and I was eager to meet them. And I contacted them, and I received back several emails from different members, among them, asking me about explanations about specific issues in the Quran, which they could not understand. And this made me realize what my role was. My role is to explain and clarify things from the Quran. I checked the Quran and there it was, the same surah which predicted the smoke, which I had discovered. Only 3 verses later, it also predicted me as the clarifying messenger. So now I knew exactly which messenger I was. I was the clarifying messenger. Anyway, I traveled to UK, and on my way there, I realized something. I realized that the role of the messengers after the Quran is not exactly the same as the messengers before the Quran. Before the Quran, people had to believe the messengers, otherwise they would not be saved, since there was no other alternative channel of believing or communicating with God. However, after the Quran, people already have the Quran, and they do not necessarily need to believe in another messenger to be saved. They can be saved by believing the Quran directly, with or without a human messenger. So the role of the messengers after the Quran is only to fix the mistakes of people, not to bring something new. And this means that knowing for sure whether someone is God's messenger or not in the modern world is not a precondition for heaven. Which means that I will never start talking about my messengership unless the topic comes up or unless people ask me. Even this video is a response to people's questions about this. Anyway, with this new realization that the believers should never bring up the topic of who is a messenger and who is not, unless the disbelievers bring it first, I went to UK and met about 10 or 15 people who were gathering monthly to study the Quran. And it happened that the 2 main leaders of that group started arguing with each other for something quite unimportant. And the negativity spread among all of us, and we exchanged careless emails for quite some time, and eventually the worst among them brought up the topic about whether I was God's messenger or not. And I had to tell them, and I told them. And as I expected, the unguided people wanted to talk about my messengership, while guided people wanted to talk about my message. And it's always like that. Anyway, I also told my family, and all my family believed me, except my father, which is why I am destined to be mostly rejected. But this connection is another topic for a more important video, since it applies to all people and not only messengers. However, when I say that I will be mostly rejected, I mean that my expectation is that about 1,000 people will believe me before the end of my life, but the world has 7 billion people, which is mostly rejection. Anyway, a few other people outside of my family also believed me, who live in many different countries. In the meantime, I gradually worked on how I was going to structure the message, to make it as comprehensive as possible, while keeping it as short as possible. Fast forward to now, 2021, and I am making this video. And I have finally realized why I heard my name being called Alban Fejza back in 2005. I finally realized what it means. Back in 2005, I had become someone who is mentioned in the Quran. I fulfilled verse 1587, which says, "We have given you the 7 pairs and the great Quran." And this verse applies to me in 7 different ways. And let me tell you one by one how this verse applies to me. First, God had put me in such a situation in 2005 where all I had in my life was 7 pairs and the Great Quran. I had no wife, no children, no house, no apartment, no car, not even a bicycle. Even a bicycle would classify as a pair of wheels, but I did not even have a bicycle. I was the only person in the world who had translated the Quran while owning nothing in my life, except for 7 pairs. And those 7 pairs are a pair of legs, so I can sit or stand when I read the Quran, a pair of hands so I can hold the Quran, a pair of lips so I can speak the Quran, a pair of eyes so I can read the Quran, a pair of ears so I can listen to the Quran, a pair of brains, left and right hemisphere, so I can understand and feel the Quran, and a pair of clothes. Actually, the Quran is talking about another pair here, which is connected to the fact that it is directed mostly to men, even though women also benefit from it. And this is partly why God left this verse seemingly vague, not to embarrass myself and all men by pointing out what the 7th pair is. So let me just say a pair of clothes instead. So if we have these 7 pairs, the next thing we should want is the Quran. I know that a lot of people in the world are in situations where they have no wealth and are completely isolated from the society, but they are always longing for something else other than the Quran. The next thing they want is something else after the 7 pairs. But the verse says the 7 pairs and the Quran. And can you find me any person in the world where the first thing he ever owned after his body is the Quran? Before having a house, before partners, before children, before cars, before jewelry, and all these are also pairs. So all the other believers of the world had either 8 pairs and then the Quran, or 9 pairs and then the Quran, or maybe 10 pairs and then the Quran, or maybe 11 pairs and then the Quran, or maybe 5 pairs and then the Quran, for example, a disabled or a blind person, or maybe 6 pairs and then the Quran if they are a single woman, or maybe at least 8 pairs and then the Quran if they have a husband, which automatically comes with dowry, so they jump from 6 to 8 pairs and more, or maybe 0 pairs and then the Quran in cases when someone is a young child who memorized the whole Quran, but they are still owned by their parents. But as you can see, it is almost impossible to find a person who was given exactly 7 pairs and then the Quran. This can happen only to a healthy man who has no wife or partners or children with him and has been guided completely independently from his parents or other relatives or friends and does not own anything except the Quran, while at the same time not being owned by anyone except God. And these cases are so rare in this world that it happened only to Muhammad and me. In the case of Muhammad, it happened in the year 622, when he migrated from Mecca to Medina. His family had escaped earlier to Medina. Then Muhammad was threatened and forced to leave Mecca. He left all his wealth, his house, his livestock, his equipment, everything. He lost everything. He only took his clothes and left. Even the camel which he used to escape did not belong to him. Abu Bakr had brought 2 camels, one for Muhammad and one for him. So as Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Medina, he was left with nothing except for the 7 pairs and the Great Quran. So all he had at that moment was his body, his clothes outside of his body, and the Quran inside of his body. This happened to him so that verse 1587 could apply to him. And later God gave the wealth back to him, again at the Battle of Badr. But at this moment, Muhammad did not have anything else. And this is why the Hijri years are counted from that moment in history. This is why all of Surah 15 was revealed to Muhammad before he left Mecca, except for verse 87, which talks about the 7 pairs which was revealed to Muhammad just after he left Mecca. Anyway, there's something pure about having nothing except the 7 pairs and the Quran. This is why when I make predictions using the Quranic initials, I use the year 2005 as a benchmark for my predictions, since that is the only time when I had only the 7 pairs and the Quran, and nothing else. A new beginning. This is why the Quran says we have given you the 7 pairs and the Great Quran. And then immediately after that it says, do not even be jealous towards those who have been coupled with someone else or something else. Basically those who have more than the 7 pairs. And God says this because having eyes to read the Quran, hands to hold the Quran, ears to listen to the Quran, and so on, if you use them for the Quran, it is a much bigger blessing than the additional pairs which God gave to the other people. And immediately the next verse after that says to me, and say, I am the clarifying warner. In this case, it calls me the clarifying warner instead of the clarifying messenger. Because back in 2005, I was not a messenger yet. I was chosen later in 2008. But in 2005, I had only fulfilled the verse about the 7 pairs. I fulfilled the verse about the 7 pairs before I was chosen a messenger. Unlike Muhammad, who fulfilled the verse about the 7 pairs after he was chosen a messenger. And this is because I had the Quran before I was chosen a messenger, while Muhammad had the Quran only after he was chosen a messenger. The second way how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me is this. At that time in 2005, when I heard my name being called, I had completed 14 years of school. 7 academic years in primary school, and then the war happened in my country and we relocated and changed the school, and then I attended 7 other years in different schools. So exactly after 14 years of school, I used the summer vacation to translate the first rough draft of the Quran. The knowledge which I had received in those 14 years of school was a precondition for being wise enough to understand and explain the Quran in the modern age. So 14 years of school and then the great Quran. Now the third way how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me is this. I was given the meanings of the 14 mysterious Quranic initials. Since the revelation of the Quran, no person on earth knew their meaning until I finally explained their meaning. It's in my other video titled Explaining Quranic Initials Predicting the Future. Some people would like to think that the verse about the 7 pairs only applies to Muhammad because the 14 mysterious Quranic initials were revealed to Muhammad. Yes, they were revealed to Muhammad, but Muhammad never understood what they mean. Muhammad was given the letters, but I was given their meaning. So we were both given the 7 pairs. He was given the 14 letters without understanding their meaning, and I was given the 14 meanings of those letters. This brings me to the fourth way how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me. When I heard my name being called Alban Fejza back in 2005, I was not just being called my name, I was being told my future. As I told you, God enabled me to discover the meaning of the 14 mysterious letters of the Quran, which tell the future of the world. And 7 of those letters were used when my name was called, which actually told my future. Here they are listed in chronological order. As I explained in that other video, each of these letters represents a meaning and a number. A is 1 and it means ox. J is 10 and it means arm. L is 30 and it means goad, a piece of stick to drive the ox. E is 5 and it means jubilation, raised happy arms. And N is 50 and it means fish. And here is the interpretation of these symbols and numbers for my case only. 3 years of hard work and spiritual growth like an ox from 2005 until 2008, when God was testing and preparing me to choose me as his messenger. The 3 hardest years of my life. I would spend the nights editing the Quran and during the day try to catch up with my studies. At the end of these 3 years, God chose me as his messenger. Then 10 years came when I was preaching, but it was an individual, unorganized struggle, without much support from anyone, like manual labor. Even those who wanted to support me, they had their own bigger challenges. Now, since 2018, I am in a period of 30 lunar years of organized struggle, where others are also supporting me in the cause of God. After that, from 2047 until 2052, a period of 5 years will come for me where I will lift up my hands and glorify God for the success. And the submitters will strive on their own without me having to tell them how to do it. And the fish and the 50 lunar years represent the whole period of 50 lunar years during which I extract information from the Quran to put it on the internet. So from 2005 until 2054, these are my 50 lunar years of constant new information. By the way, when I heard my name being called back in 2005, I heard my last name being pronounced as Fejza instead of Fejza. The letter Z was dropped from my last name, and in the original alphabet, the letter Z means armed struggle. So God took armed struggle away from my life, similar to Moses, who did not engage in armed struggle against Pharaoh, because God had a better plan. So 50 years of striving in the cause of God, but no years of armed struggle. Now, the fifth way how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me is the HM initials. The HM initials appear as a separate verse in the Quran exactly 7 times. This is the only verse in the Quran which is repeated exactly 7 times. And it has a pair of letters, H and M. 7 pairs. This pair of initials was actually the one which I used for my first discovery about the future, which is when I became a messenger. Back in 2008, I realized that the prophecy about the smoke, which was expected to come in the future, is found in the surah which starts with the HM initials. And I used the value of these letters in combination with other Quranic facts to predict that the smoke will come in the year 2052. Then many years later, I discovered the meanings of all the other initials. So the HM initials are 7 pairs within 7 pairs. Now the sixth way of how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me is this. The 7 pairs are the 7 pairs of personal characteristics which a person should have to pre-qualify as a potential messenger, like courage, belief, wisdom, submission, and so on. I list them in my other video titled The Clarifying Messenger. Now let me tell you the 7th way and the most important way how the verse about the 7 pairs applies to me. Okay, there's only one Quran, but it has 7 meanings. In some verses of the Quran, all those 7 meanings are the same, in which case the verse seems clear and easy to understand. But in other verses, some of the meanings or all the 7 meanings are different, in which case the verse might feel unclear. Now when it comes to these verses with multiple meanings, you can search for the most knowledgeable scholars of the Quran during all of history, since the revelation of the Quran, and you will find that usually they are only able to tell you 1 or 2 or at the most 3 meanings. But I can tell you all the 7 meanings. I am the first human being ever to understand all the 7 meanings of the Quran. This shows that God gave me all the 7 meanings of the Quran, and I tell you those meanings in my video titled Multiple Meaning Verses. So the most important way to understand God's statement when He says, "We have given thee the 7 pairs and the great Quran," is to understand that God has given me the 7 meanings which are paired to the Quran, and the great Quran which contains the actual words and letters which is available for everybody. And then God continues by saying, "Do not be jealous of what we have given the others with partners, and do not be saddened, and lower your wing for the believers. And say, I am the clarifying warner. We will deal with the dividers." So God is identifying my opponents here by calling them the dividers. And then He tells me why they are the dividers by saying, they accept the Quran only partially. By accepting only one meaning and rejecting the other meanings, they will all be questioned about everything they have done.